date of September 24th, 2024, in County Court at Law Number 2. In the case is styled the State of Texas versus Samuel Hayden Falk. Let the record reflect that Mr. Falk is present in the court with his attorney, John Macy. And let the record also reflect that the state is present with Assistant District Attorneys, Attorney Haley Simmons and Attorney Andrew Hughes. Let the record reflect that the jury is now seated and present in the courtroom. State, are you ready?
State's ready, Your Honor.
The defense, are you ready?
Defense is ready, Your Honor.
Okay. So at this time, we need Mr. Falk to stand as the prosecutor reads the information. Ms. Prosecutor, you may proceed.
In the name and by authority of the state of Texas comes now the undersigned Assistant Criminal District Attorney of Jefferson County, Texas, on behalf of the state of Texas, and presents in and to the County Court at Law of Jefferson County, Texas, that in Jefferson County, Texas, Samuel Hayden Falk, hereafter styled the defendant, heretofore on or about May 11th, 2019, did then and there operate a motor vehicle in a public place in Jefferson County, Texas, while the said defendant was intoxicated, against the peace and dignity of the state.
And Mr. Falk, how do you plead? Not guilty, guilty, or no contest?
Not guilty.
Not guilty? Okay, Mr. Falk, you may be seated. State, would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
You all here. So yesterday we talked a lot about the elements of the law and what the state must prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt. And on behalf of the state of Texas, I come to you today, and since you have been selected as jurors, I want to discuss what the evidence will show in this case. I want to discuss what I believe the evidence will show to you as we move through this trial. And once again, I know we talked a lot about the elements, but I want to reiterate them one more time. And that is in Jefferson County, Texas, the defendant Samuel Falk, on or about May 11th, 2019, did then and there operate a motor vehicle in a public place while said defendant was intoxicated. That intoxicated brings us back to those three definitions we really drilled in yesterday during the R. That is the mental faculties, the loss of mental faculties, things such as memory loss, physical faculties, things that y'all had said to me regarding maybe loss of balance, inability to speak properly, slurred speech, glossy eyes, things of that matter. And then lastly, we talked about blood, whether there was a blood alcohol concentration level of greater than 0.08. And what you're going to hear from, or who you're going to hear from in this case first, is Paul Vickers. And Paul Vickers is the homeowner whose yard was crashed into. You're then going to hear from Officer Peyton Collins, who was the responding officer on scene that night, conducting the investigation. You'll also hear from Sergeant Timothy Smith, a supervising officer with the New Orleans Police Department. You'll hear from Travis Armstrong, the nurse who actually, the nurse who extracted the blood from the defendant. You're going to hear from Memling Altorino, and that is the blood analyst who performed and reviewed the testing of the defendant's blood. With that being said, and on behalf of the state, I believe that the evidence will show that on May 11th, 2019, the defendant's blood was greater than the legal limit at the time of testing after he had crashed into Mr. Vickers' yard. I believe someone's up there looking. And he was then transferred to the hospital for evaluation. I then believe that the evidence will show that the defendant's mental and physical faculties were so altered that the defendant could barely form a coherent sentence. I further believe that the evidence will show that the defendant blatantly admits to this crime while at the hospital. You're going to hear from the officer on scene making statements regarding a potential medical emergency and trying to decipher whether he needed to conduct an investigation as to whether this is a medical emergency or a potential intoxicated driver. And however, I anticipate the evidence will show that the officer, working in his best capacity, was making the most informed decision he could make with the facts he had before him and how to proceed with said investigation. And then I then believe that the evidence will show Officer Collins, following his investigation, of a potential intoxicated driver made the informed decision to move forward with the driving while intoxicated investigation. Officer Collins did this by taking into consideration the totality of evidence, the totality of the circumstances around him. Things we talked about yesterday, such as slurred speech, inability to walk properly, glossy eyes, admissions, and so much more in which the state intends to present to you over these next several days. Once again, my name is Haley Simmons. I'm excited to present this case to you over the next few days. Once myself and the defense arrest, you're going to go back to deliberate. You're going to have the ability to ask for the evidence that's been admitted, and I truly hope that you do. And once you've completed your deliberations and you as jurors have come to a unanimous decision, I ask that you find the defendant guilty of driving while intoxicated. Thank you.
Ms. Macy, would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly.
Okay.
Good afternoon. We had an opportunity to talk briefly yesterday, and I had an opportunity to talk to you, and you had an opportunity to talk to me. We no longer have that ability. I have an opportunity to occasionally make arguments to you, like I am right now. Well, it's not really an argument, but it is. But you can't talk to me. I can't ask you to talk to me, and just like you can't talk to Ms. Simmons. You have to sit here and you have to listen to the evidence and come to your conclusion. They talk a lot about, and Ms. Simmons believes she's going to be able to show that Samuel was intoxicated. But driving while intoxicated, it's driving while intoxicated. It's not that he appeared to have slurred speech or appeared to be uneasy on his feet. Listen to the evidence and you'll see what happened. It was a car accident. And so consider the possibility that there was a reason for the things that Officer Collins just concluded was intoxication. And maybe it wasn't intoxication. They have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it was. And so I think that if you consider that, then you will come to the realization that maybe he was intoxicated, but maybe he wasn't. And so I ask that you wait and listen to all the evidence before you make that decision. And I appreciate your time.
Ms. Simmons, would you like to call your first witness?
Your Honor, before doing so, the state would like to invoke the rule.
Okay. Any witnesses, or if we have any witnesses that are in the court, you have to leave the courtroom. And when you come in, now basically when the rule has been invoked, it basically means that the witness, you are ordered to leave the courtroom and not re-enter unless instructed to do so by the bailiff or me. You are not to discuss this case or your testimony with any other witnesses or anyone else except the attorneys, and not to read any report or comment on the testimony or evidence in this case. Any witness violating this instruction is subject to being held in contempt of court. Okay, so we have one witness in the back or two? One, okay. Okay, so she has to leave the courtroom.
And Your Honor, may I approach?
Hold on a minute. Okay, Ms. Macy, you wanted to approach the bench?
Yes, Your Honor.
Hold on a minute. Let me do this. State, are you ready? Defense, are you ready?
This is really.
Okay. Ms. Simmons, you can call your first witness.
State calls Paul Vickers.
Paul Vickers.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Bailey, please. Now, is Mr. Vickers in the hallway or is he in the?
He is in the hallway right here.
Is she finding it? Okay, wait. Mr. Vickers, would you please come here? Come forward, and then you're gonna raise your right hand so I can swear you in. For the record, would you please state your full name?
Jeffrey Vickers.
Mr. Vickers, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Vickers, you may put your hand down. Mr. Vickers, you may take the witness stand. Oh, did she plug it? Oh. That's fine. Ms. Simmons, you may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. If you could go ahead and state your name for the record.
Jeffrey Vickers.
Right. Now, Mr. Vickers, on the night of May 11, 2019, were you at your residence?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And was that residence in Nederland, Texas?
Correct.
Is that in Jefferson County, Texas?
Yes.
And just to clarify, since May 11, 2019, have you sustained any head injuries that may alter your memory?
Yes.
Roughly how many of?
Well, I don't know if they've had many since that date, but I've had 4 major head injuries in my.
Outside of those injuries, do you recall anything significant occurring on the night of May 11, 2019?
No, ma'am.
Would it help to refresh your memory by looking at a statement you had made to police at that time?
Possibly, yes.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes, you may approach.
Would just take a look at this, read it to yourself.
Oh.
After reviewing that document, did that refresh your memory as to May 11, 2019?
Yes.
And do you recall what significant event happened on that night?
Just someone run up in my yard in a vehicle.
And when that happened, did that wake you up?
Yes.
Did you go outside to see what had happened?
Yes.
And at that time, did you approach the vehicle? Did you see anyone inside that vehicle?
Yes.
Could you tell the jury if the vehicle was on at the time?
Now,
Could you tell the jury if the vehicle was on at the time?
I don't know if it was or not.
Do you recall,
I
do
don't know.
you recall the vehicle being in drive?
I don't recall.
No, I objected. This is leaving.
Objection overruled.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes, you may approach the witness.
I'm gonna give this to you one last time, or one more time, I apologize. If you could read that to yourself. Do you recall, or did this document refresh your memory?
Well, if I wrote that at the time, I put it in the car and turned it off.
So it's your testimony, or I apologize, the vehicle was in drive?
As far as that says, yes.
Objection, Your Honor. I don't know, number one, what she's showing him.
Okay,
That
Could you-
is,
Mr. Vickers, hold on a
I
minute.
also object to the fact that he's testifying to that document, not his memory.
Well, he could use the document to refresh his memory.
He can, but he said that document said X.
Okay, now, Mr. Vickers,
yes, sir.
if you cannot remember, if she shows you the document is only used to refresh your memory. What that basically means is once you read it, you realize that, okay, I remember now. So your memory has been refreshed, and so you can testify to what you remember.
Well, I don't remember, but if I wrote it down on that paper, that's what I did that night.
Okay, but,
But as far as remembering, no, sir.
Is your memory affected by the head injuries you have received
Yes,
over the
ma'am.
past several years?
Yes,
But the paper I give you, that did refresh your memory to some extent, correct?
yes, I recollect the incident, yes,
And you do recall going outside to see the vehicle in the yard,
correct.
and you saw the individual in the vehicle at that time.
Yes, there was an individual. in
Where
the,
was that individual inside the car?
Driver's seat.
No further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
okay, Mr. Macy?
No question, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Vickers, you may step down. Now, Mr. Vickers, the rule has been invoked, and what that basically means is that once you leave the courtroom, you're not to reenter unless instructed to do so by the bailiff or me. You are not to discuss this case or your testimony with other witnesses or anyone else except the attorneys. You are not to read any report or comment on the testimony or the evidence in this case. Any witness who violates this instruction is subject to being held in contempt of court. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, Mr. Vickers, now may this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense, may this witness be excused?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Vickers, you're excused and you have a blessed day. Versus Samuel Hayden Falk. Let the record reflect that Mr. Falk is present in court with his attorney, Attorney John Macy. Let the record also reflect that the state is present with Assistant District Attorneys, Attorney Haley Simmons and Attorney Andrew Hubel. And let the record reflect that the jury is now present and seated in the courtroom. Ms. Simmons, you may call your witness.
State calls Officer Peyton Collins.
Officer Collins, you've been previously sworn in. You may take the witness stand. Ms. Simmons, you may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. If you could, again, state your name for the record.
I'm Officer Peyton Collins with the Needle Police Department,
I'm sorry, who was your employer?
the Needle Police Department.
Are you a certified police officer?
Sure am.
How long have you been a certified police officer?
A little over 6 years,
How long have you been with the Nederland Police Department?
a little over 6
Can you explain to the jury your role with them?
years. Currently I'm assigned to the patrol division with the guys that answer calls and go to wrecks and all that kind of stuff. The one that you see out in the patrol cars.
And that about explains your duties, correct?
It's just normal patrol duties.
Do you have any other prior law enforcement experience?
No, I've been with Meter since I became a police officer.
Do you recall the evening of May 11th, 2019?
I do.
And on that date at about 11:45 PM, were you on duty?
I was.
Were you dispatched to a residence in reference to a major accident? Was that residence in Nederland, Texas?
Sure was.
Is that in Jefferson County, Texas?
It is.
Were you, when you arrived at the scene, were you the only officer there?
Myself and Sergeant, Smith. with us.
Okay. Was he acting as your supervisor? Could you go ahead and explain to the jury the scene folding out upon your arrival?
Well, it was such a long time ago that I don't remember exactly the specifics of everything, but I was dispatched to a residence, I think it was 903 South 13th, in reference to a motor vehicle accident where it was a vehicle versus a house, they said. Whenever I got there, it was there was a black four passenger car that had left the roadway onto someone's private property and struck, I believe, a fence, small like tree, looked like kind of like a fruit tree or something. And it was like nothing but chances of, I guess, the residents or whatever.
After seeing the vehicle on the wreck, did you immediately go check on the occupant?
I did.
And when you approached that vehicle, did you make contact with the occupant?
Sure.
Is that individual in the courtroom today?
Eager.
Can you identify him by an article of clothing?
Yes, he's wearing a green long sleeve shirt with 3 buttons.
Your Honor, may the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant.
The record will so reflect.
Was
You
the
may
defendant,
proceed.
I apologize, Judge. Was the defendant the sole occupant of the vehicle?
He was.
Was he conscious at the time you approached him?
He was.
Where at the vehicle was the
He
defendant?
was in the driver's seat.
Can you go ahead and explain to the jury the defendant's behavior upon approaching him?
He was very, I guess a good word for it would kind of be like maybe erratic. I believe he was attempting to turn the vehicle off that was already off. He kept trying to do this with his hands to the key, like to turn it off, and he wasn't really, I guess, following directions. I kept trying to get him to focus on me more than trying to turn the car off, but it wasn't.
So the defendant was not responsive to you?
Yeah.
Did you ask the defendant at that time if he had been injured?
Yeah, I asked him if he was hurt.
And how did he respond?
He said no.
At that point, did you decide to go ahead and call out for EMS and fire anyways?
I asked him if he would put his shoes on and get out of the car. And, he said something about, I guess, maybe being hurting or something like that. And, that's whenever I summoned fire and EMS to respond.
At this point in time during your investigation, were you investigating one that could possibly be arisen from a medical emergency?
Yeah, at that time.
For what reason?
I didn't smell any alcohol or anything at that moment. So he did have a little slurred speech, was confused and stuff like that. But as far as I was concerned, I didn't smell any alcohol, didn't see any open containers or anything like that. So I figured maybe it could have been a medical emergency because it happens.
Given that information, did you ask the defendant if he had been drinking?
Yes.
To which, how did he respond?
He told me no.
Did you ask if he had been on any narcotics?
I did.
To which, how did he respond?
He told me.
Did you ask if he was taking any prescription medications?
I did.
And how did he respond to that?
He told me no.
At this point, what did you decide to do in your investigation?
After he was out of the vehicle, and I believe EMS was there at that point, he was seated or laid on the stretcher, on their stretcher, and asked him for consent to search the vehicle, I believe.
Prior to asking for consent and the defendant being on the stretcher, did he make any statements to you that were concerning? If you need to refresh your memory, that is completely fine.
Yeah.
Just ask that you do not read off.
Okay.
Just let me know when you're ready.
Can you repeat your question?
Whenever he was on the stretcher, did he make any statements to you prior to asking consent for to search his vehicle that were concerning to you?
No, I can't recall. I believe after I asked for consent, he did say some things, like right after.
And what did the defendant say right after you had asked for consent?
He granted me consent, and he said that I was just gonna find like the alcohol in the vehicle for the night.
How did you respond to that?
I asked if he'd been drinking again. And he said, no, sir. We were just gonna drink alcohol drinks, which didn't make really any sense.
Did the defendant thereafter admit to drinking that night?
Yeah, I think he told me he had 2 drinks after that. After he told me that he had been drinking.
Was it at this point in time that your investigation for what had been a potential medical emergency then started to transfer into a potential driver while intoxicated?
Yes,
So you asked for consent. Did he grant that consent?
he did.
What did you do with that granted consent?
Search the vehicle.
What did you find?
Some prescription medication that was not prescribed to the defendant.
At this point in time within your career as a police officer, how many DWI investigations have you completed?
I think this was my second.
Okay, was this why your supervisor was on scene?
Yeah, you could say that.
Did you initiate any form of standardized field sobriety test while on scene?
No.
Can you explain why not?
Just due to the fact that he was, involved in the injury, he was pretty much transported immediately from the car to the stretcher. There was still a concern of, medical, evaluation needed to be taking place. I just felt it was safer for him to not perform standardized field sobriety test at that point.
Is this routine practice when you're suspecting that someone may be injured?
Yeah.
Okay, and as a precaution, given the wreck, was the defendant thereafter transported
Yes.
to the hospital? What hospital was he transported to?
The Southeast Texas Medical Center located at 2555 Jimmy Johnson Boulevard.
Did you thereafter go and remain with the defendant?
Mhm.
Okay, Your Honor, at this time, the state would like to ask that we break until tomorrow afternoon. We do intend on adding or introducing a video as an exhibit that we do not think will be completed prior to 5.
Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break for the evening. I know that, earlier we had hearings outside of your presence that took a lot of time, but, that was necessary. And so therefore, we're gonna break for the evening. We're gonna ask that you be back tomorrow at 1:30, and we're gonna start promptly at 1:30. So, make sure that you have your badges. So at this time, everyone please stand as the jury exits the courtroom, and you can follow the bill. You're excused. Okay, and Officer Collins, we're gonna start back up with you on
Okay.
tomorrow at 1:30.
Cool.
All right. Everyone, you're excused.
Roll vote.
Yes.
Then everyone, please have a blessed day. We'll be in recess until 1:30 on tomorrow afternoon.
Thank you.